Thank you so much. That might be overstating it. I'm so glad to see all these people lining up to sign up for their CPD. This is great. This morning I'm going to spend a little bit of time just giving you a bit of an update. I really do appreciate the opportunity, as always, to spend some time with you today and give you a little bit of insight into what's going on at the Law Society. It's really been a busy few months since the last time I spoke to you in May, and the past year has also been a really big period of recalibration and establishing greater stability at the organization and just moving ahead to ensure that we're fully focusing on implementing our approved strategic priorities and also developing greater efficiencies and smoother administration of our regulatory systems, which will benefit all of us. I wanted to start today by talking about our public awareness campaign. I think probably many of you have heard about this. When I spoke to you last May, I actually talked about the change in name to the Law Society of Ontario and the public awareness campaign that was starting to come to fruition. Our goal as a legal regulator in Ontario is to be the go-to place for the public to support their ability to find legal providers and legal information when they most need it. The campaign also positively has an ancillary benefit, and that benefit is to inform the public about the important work that lawyers and paralegals do to support their needs and the value of actually using lawyers and paralegals to appropriately and effectively manage legal issues within our system of justice. Our new name is going to remove the barriers that the research showed us existed. Very few, if any, members of the public actually understood what the terminology Upper Canada meant or where that meant that we actually resided. Both the new name and the public awareness campaign are focused on ensuring that we will be able to help the people of Ontario see themselves in our organization and to also recognize that we're there for them. Both the name and the new branding strategy will establish the Law Society as a relevant and modern and more easily understood organization. It reinforces that our commitment is to protect the public interest and that we are evolving as an organization, and we want to get that message out there to the public so that they know that they can come to us for support. The campaign itself launched in late September, and it includes advertising in a variety of formats, including radio, transit ads, social media, and a number of other digital communications aspects. The objective of the campaign is to highlight the services that the Law Society has available for the public. And we do, of course, recognize that the importance of the internet is a central source of information, and the Law Society's website has also been completely redeveloped with a brand new look and feel, and it provides now a more accessible, service-oriented and user-friendly experience for the members of the public and yourselves. Central to our awareness campaign, this website redesign was timed to launch exactly with the launch of the campaign. Our new website provides the public and licensees with very easy access to important information through more intuitive navigation and also an improved search functionality. So now you'll also see that the lawyer and paralegal directory, which was on the Law Society's website, has been significantly enhanced, which is helpful for all of us. You can now search for a lawyer using either a postal code or a home address, so a proximity search. So a member can go in and key in their postal code and actually find the list of lawyers in their area, all of which can now be completed right from the Law Society's homepage, so very direct. I'd certainly encourage you to explore the website and to watch and listen for our awareness campaign and help us to make our Law Society everyone's Law Society, because the independence of the bar and our continued self-regulatory status is truly critical to the administration of justice in the public interest. And the value that's provided by lawyers and paralegals is critical to the public's navigation of our legal system. So let us know what you think of the website and provide us with any feedback that you may have about that. Just want to touch base on the budget for 2019 and lawyer fees. Convocation just approved a modest increase to the annual fee for lawyers of $18, so the lawyer annual fee will increase to $2,201. Now, this fee still includes a significant component related to replenishment of our compensation fund. You will recall that our compensation fund policy requires to have a certain amount of money in that fund as a result of significant losses over the last couple of years suffered by the public at the hands of a few lawyers who did not do a very good job and actually defalcated monies and other issues. The comp fund levy still remains fairly high at about $225, which is a significant component of our annual fee and will continue to be a significant component for at least another year. But we are pleased to advise that the fund replenishment is coming along nicely, and it looks like we will be fully replenished in the 3-year time frame that we had set for it. So that's the good news. The other good news is it looks like our comp claims have come back down to our normally recognized levels, and so we are not at this point in time for 2018 seeing any difficult situations coming down in the future. So that's good news. This increase in the member fee can also be offset if you enroll in the Law Society's annual pre-authorized payment plan, in which case you would be provided with a $50 annual fee discount prorated by your fee category. So that is something to keep in mind. And the budget does include support this year for next year, for 2019, for continued implementation of a number of the activities in our strategic priorities, including the continued implementation of the challenges report, the equity, diversity and inclusion activities, the Indigenous Review Panel work and the Indigenous Framework recommendations, improvements to the practice management helpline, including streamlined telephone access and a broadened scope of service, and I'll speak about that again in a moment, and also continuing development of a new license for the provision of some family law legal services. So I wanted to just take a few minutes this morning to actually outline to you some of the scope of the services that are currently being provided by the Law Society to the public and to our members. I wanted you to have a little bit more context with respect to the annual fee application and what it's actually being used to support, particularly in respect of the day-to-day operational activities that we are engaging in at the Law Society, and also separate and apart from any new projects or programs or activities that may be happening annually. I'm going to give you a few snapshots, essentially, and these represent only just a portion of the overall activity of what the Law Society is up to on a day-to-day basis, just to give you a flavor of the work that's going on behind the scenes. So I wanted to start with a snapshot about how we serve the public and the professions. Annually at the Law Society, we respond to over 250,000 telephone calls into our main reception, our complaints line, and our membership general services lines. We respond to over 16,000 emails. We receive over 7,500 walk-ins to our membership services window in the Law Society itself. And we also connect the public to 45,000 different lawyers through our referrals on the Law Society referral service. And of those 45,000 connections, 33,000 of those referrals are actually provided online. 11,000 of those are provided on our crisis line, so just-in-time legal crisis supports for members, for the public, pardon me, and also 1,000 referrals are provided through email. A snapshot just regarding licensing, practice supports and resources, and also quality assurance for lawyers. We continue to license over 2,200 lawyers annually. We see in our licensing process over 2,500 new applicants every year, and we have about 4,500 candidates for licensing who are looking to be lawyers moving through our system at any given time. We are licensing over 1,100 paralegals every year, about 1,500 new applicants every year, and about 2,000 of them moving through our system on a regular basis. We have over 50,000 CPD registrants at the Law Society's CPD programs annually, and we receive 125,000 visits to our Access CLE database, which houses all of our CPD content for your use. We receive 20,000 calls to the Great Library for research questions related to your day-to-day work, and over 8,000 practice management questions, ethics questions, and professional responsibility questions on our practice management helpline. On an annual basis now, thanks to our coach and advisor network, we're connecting more than 500 unique members to their coach or advisor on an annual basis. We conduct over 500 law practice reviews of lawyers, 1,400 spot audits of lawyer firms, and about 200 paralegal practice audits. So quite busy in the area of licensing and competence. And then in the area of professional regulation, it's always interesting to see these numbers. We are continuing to see over 6,500 complaints against lawyers and paralegals on an annual basis. About 4,500 of those are transferred to our intake and resolution department. 1,200 of those end up being complaints that are actually instructed for a formal investigation. And of those, about 25% of them are closed with a caution or a practice advice to the member, and about 35% are closed for insufficient evidence to warrant any further regulatory activity. We send about 150 of those investigations to prosecution every year, and 120 matters land at the hearing division, and 25 at appeal or judicial review at the appeal division or at the courts. And we still continue to receive over 200 applications by the public to the Law Society to our compensation fund seeking redress as a result of an inappropriate conduct of a professional in our environment. So very busy activity. There is no lack of work at the Law Society. Unfortunately, there's also no lack of complaints to the Law Society. Now, I wanted to just take a few more minutes to drill down into that area of complaints and just bring you up to date on what we're seeing in this area so that you can exchange this information with your members. It's always important to remind ourselves of the areas of risk that the Law Society and all of us as members must be alive to. We continue to see that the majority of complaints to the Law Society are about lawyers, 80% of the complaints. 12% of the complaints are about paralegals, and the remainder of those complaints are related to things like unauthorized practice or other matters. Of the complaints about lawyers, 80% of those relate to sole practitioners or small firm lawyers, whereas only 52% of our population are sole and small firm lawyers. So much increased risk in the sole and small firm environment, as we know. Notably, we see far more complaints about lawyers who have been practicing for 40 or more years. Their average complaints level is much higher than the average population within our profession. And we also see that in the first 5 years of practice, it's not as high a risk from the perspective of formal complaints, with far fewer complaints received per capita about this group than the size of their representation in our profession. So interesting to note that. The highest areas of complaints by area of misconduct continue to be service-related issues, which include things like failure to communicate to your clients, integrity issues, which include things like incivility, behaving dishonorably, harassment, followed by governance issues, a failure to respond or improper advertising, financial issues, mishandling of money, problems with trust accounting, and finally conflicts issues, things like borrowing money from clients, etc. You'll note in the numbers here that they total more than 100% because most of our complaints have multiple components. Most complaints will come in and will allege issues related to 2 or more of these areas. The highest proportion of new complaints by practice area continues to be civil litigation, family law, and real estate law, and that has not changed for quite some time. So interesting stats about regulation. Again, it's still very busy, and this is where we're seeing some issues that we might want to be aware of. Let me just move now to talk a little bit about licensing for lawyers, and I know the other day you had some sessions on a variety of different activities that are happening in consultation with the Law Society. Thought I'd give you a little bit of update on licensing. As you know, Convocation, of course, decided to undertake a comprehensive analysis of the lawyer licensing process following its 2016 review of the Pathways pilot project, which included the integration of the law practice program pilot as well as enhancements to the articling program. The goal of this analysis is really to formulate a longer-term plan and recommendations for an appropriate and sustainable licensing system for lawyers in the province. So from April to June of 2017, some time ago now, we did conduct an extensive consultation and learning activity with the profession through what we called the Dialogue on Licensing. And we talked there about the realities and the challenges that we're actually facing with respect to lawyer licensing, some of the pressure points involved in lawyer licensing. Drawing on all of those discussions, and we thank those of you who were involved in that and for your input, and then also conducting further research, including further consultations through focus groups and also further requests for submissions and feedback and input from all of you, the Law Society's Professional Development and Competence Committee developed and consulted on 4 different options or pathways to licensing. The consultation period, as you know, just closed at the end of October, and the committee is currently hard at work on its recommendations, and they will be presented in public at a special convocation in early December, December the 10th. That's a Monday, if anyone is interested in tuning in to watch the outcome of that particular consultation and the recommendations. We are also looking at governance. So you may have heard about the Governance Task Force. So on August 9th, the Law Society did release a call for comment prepared by our Governance Task Force, and this consultation closed in late October. The Governance Task Force was established in September of 2016, and it was to review and make recommendations relating to the Law Society's governance structure and operational effectiveness related to the board in particular. Options under consideration to enhance the Law Society's governance included in that report talked about potential changes to the number of governors and the rights and the privileges of certain categories of governors. So, for instance, ex officio members of convocation versus the elected members of convocation. It also talked about consideration of changes to the length of terms for treasurers and benchers, perhaps new terminology that better reflects the Law Society's governance structure, and the implementation of a formalized board code of conduct, as well as a number of other enhancements. So the call for comment paper did discuss the work of the task force, its areas of focus. It included specific questions on the options under consideration. It can all be found online if you're interested at this point, but we did receive over 100 submissions, and so that's a healthy grouping of submissions, and the task force will be reporting out on this publicly at the November 30th convocation for anyone who is interested in that outcome. Other consultations. We are very busy at the Law Society undertaking consultations and making very sure that we are getting your feedback and your input as we move forward on a number of issues. We want to make sure your voices are heard, and we want to make sure that we're taking that into account as we derive our solutions to these issues. You can find the calls for comment and for consultations under our News and Events tab of the Law Society's website under Current Consultations. Let me talk a little bit about a few of them. Compliance-Based Entity Regulation Task Force is currently engaged in obtaining some feedback from lawyers to assess the usefulness of a potential proposed practice assessment tool that might be implemented to support proactive practice management activities by all licensees. This analysis is going to include a look at how the practice assessment tool might be implemented and to what size of firm that tool might actually be applied in the future. The input is going to be considered, and further consultations will take place as we move forward. We've got some time left for this particular decision-making process. Proactive regulation, as you may know, and the concepts including practice assessment and the application of assessment tools is really about establishing goals and objectives and seeking to have licensees establish policies within their own legal businesses to proactively manage areas of risk. It's related to the concepts of engaging in ongoing proactive improvements, placing the onus on firms to engage in regular reviews of practices, and the ultimate goal of all of this is really to avoid having the regulator have to come out and do something in a reactive manner. So keep an eye out for that information. We will definitely need your input on this. Advertising and fee arrangements issues working group. I know you chatted about this the other day. The payment of fees and offering of benefits to title insurers, to real estate, by title insurers to real estate lawyers and their staff. We're considering whether additional regulatory measures might be required. The comment period for this matter just closed at the end of October, and I know that FOLA provided a submission, and our committee will be considering that input over the next few months. And alternative business structures. A draft regulatory framework for civil society organizations is out there now. The call for comment is open on that regulatory framework, and that framework would permit legal services through registered civil society organizations such as charities, not-for-profit organizations. The policy is really intended to enhance justice for individuals who may have legal issues, but who traditionally have faced significant barriers to receiving legal advice from a lawyer or a paralegal due to their circumstances. Under this new policy, civil society organizations will be permitted to provide legal services to clients in addition to the services that they already provide, such as social and health services. The policy is intended to enable the creation of new inclusive entry points for the most vulnerable vulnerable people to find legal services, and also to integrate service delivery for people who are facing multiple issues at the same time, including legal problems. Under the proposed policy, civil society organizations must be registered with the Law Society. Provided certain conditions are met, they can provide this service, and those include that the licensee has control over the delivery of legal services, that solicitor-client privilege is protected, and that the fundamentals of professionalism are safeguarded throughout that process. So you can find full details for this particular consultation on the Law Society's website, and the call for comment on that closes mid-January. Thought I'd spend a few minutes talking today once again about the Family Legal Services Provider License. So you will recall that this results from the Boncalo recommendations, and following which the Ministry of the Attorney General and the Law Society of Ontario worked together to derive an action plan to move forward proactively to improve public access to legal services in the family law area. We received government support for some initial funding of a development of a model that will see a new license developed for family legal services providers. Now, this is a candidate-neutral license, and what I mean by that is that it will be open to any individual who completes the requisite course of study, all of the assessments, and all other licensing requirements that will be developed to support this license. So it is quite likely that paralegals and other legal service intermediaries will be the likely candidates for this particular license. There will be a very robust training and assessment protocol that will be derived in the creation of this new license. And the first phase of our development has already started, and this phase is focused on determining the actual scope of the services related to family law processes for the completion of forms and the navigation of the family legal services situations. The second phase will then consider, after assessing the first phase, any advocacy competencies and other activities that might build upon the first level. The Law Society has currently conducted well over 80 meetings with family law stakeholders and has been working with experienced providers, including lawyers, law clerks, judges, court administrators, and others, to establish all of the activities within the scope of this initial navigation license development. It includes doing things like establishing a competencies profile, which is essentially mapping out for all of us exactly what the activities will be within this family legal services provision, and then determining more specifically, once we know that, what the knowledge, skills, and actual abilities are that will be required in order for any individual who is licensed to undertake this service to provide those services safely and effectively to their clients. In turn, that will then support the development of the training requirements that lead up to the actual issuance of a license. We will derive the scope of the assessment for the license and the assessment protocols or tests, both within the education stream in advance of licensing, so what's going to have to take place in the learning and training at an educational institution in order to obtain the appropriate diploma or credential to be provided to the Law Society as proof that you've completed that educational training. And then also the second tranche to determine the extent of the actual licensing assessment. And this means assessing and testing knowledge, skills, and abilities that will be required for entry-level licensing, and that's the activity that will take place at the actual licensing process at the Law Society itself. So the work is continuing on this development with an expectation that there will be a new license approved for application and a new licensing process for that purpose in place for family legal services providers to be licensed in 2020. So, Practice Management Helpline. I mentioned this a little earlier with respect to some of our new program activities that the Law Society is going to be supporting in 2019 and beyond. And the Practice Management Helpline is going to be something we will be focused on, and it will be new and improved. It continues to be a very active service with well over 8,000 calls a year from individuals who are looking for assistance on practice management, ethics, and professional responsibility. You'll see in the slide the breakdown of callers by the top 3 areas of issue include the fact that lawyers predominantly call us in relation to the very same areas in which we see a higher incidence of complaints: real estate, civil litigation, and family law. We're going to be focusing on providing support and assistance to legal professionals in a more fulsome manner, and Convocation, as a result of that, recently approved changes to the Practice Management Helpline that will continue to help us to evolve the system to support a modern and responsive and agile tool that can assist all of you. It is still the case that the Practice Management Helpline will not provide you with legal advice, but these enhancements will assist practitioners to receive more involved and timely information than is currently the case. And if you are looking for legal advice, please don't hesitate to call us, because we can put you in touch with an advisor on the Coach and Advisor Network. But the Practice Management Helpline will be highly dependent on you calling us and giving us specifics about your particular practice management, ethics, and professional responsibility issue, and our counsel and our coordinating staff assigned to the program will be able to assist to redirect you and find the information you're looking for. The Law Society has determined that this program requires more attention as a positive means of allowing us as the regulator to provide you with resources and to assist all of you to avoid the consequences of bad practice management, ethical dilemmas, or professional responsibility dilemmas and other decisions that you have to make every day in your busy practices. Again, you'll note from the earlier slides, 45% or more of the complaints into the Law Society do relate to poor practice management judgment, such as client service. So this is a very valuable service for all of your members. Enhancements will be phased into the practice management gradually across 2019 and 2020. We're going to be looking at a streamlined telephone access with a triage program that will prioritize issues based on urgency. We're going to explore some digital platforms, some chat line and helpline apps. We're going to broaden the scope of the service and provide more robust guidance and work with each of our callers to arrive at more definitive answers to their inquiries. And we're also going to develop additional practical resources, including multimedia interfaces, interactive technologies, and also some micro-learning modules for just-in-time assistance that we can leave or send along to practitioners. So those are just some of the enhancements we're going to be working on in 2019 and 2020. I just wanted to spend a moment, I don't have a slide on this, but further to the Treasurer's discussions last evening, I thought I should just spend another moment on legal technology progression and what the Law Society is actually doing to engage in those discussions. I think the major takeaway from last evening and what we're hoping to get across to all of you is that we are acknowledging at the Law Society that the practice of law, like any other professional services, is going to be looking to change the manner in which we approach legal practice. Client needs are going to be changing. The modes of delivery in which you provide these services are going to be changing. And it's going to be important in the next probably 5 to 10 years for us to take a look at this a little more closely, and we're going to do that from at least 2 different perspectives. The first is to just make sure that we are able to understand and support technology that could be enhanced in a way that will provide services to clients that will allow them to get more effective and frankly affordable services as they move forward. Times they are changing, and as legal professionals we too have to move forward. Now, our practices are all very different. This will be impactful in different ways to different types of practices, but it's incumbent upon all of us as legal professionals and all other professionals to make sure that we're addressing consumer needs. The second area that we're going to be looking at from the perspective of legal technology is to really ensure that we're able to expand the opportunities to provide legal assistance in affordable ways, but also to make sure that our clients understand what effective service looks like, and as a regulator that we understand that what's being provided through a technology-enhanced application is safe and avoids harm for clients. So as a regulator, we're going to be evolving in this space, and we're going to be evolving along with you as you evolve your practices. Technology Working Group at the Law Society has started looking at some of these changes. It's going to start with education, trying to make sure we're coming up to speed, looking at what's happening across the world. In some of the other international jurisdictions across the world, they're a little bit ahead of us in these areas. They're looking and starting to establish sandboxes and safe places for people to suggest new technology applications, talking to regulators about where can the regulators step back and allow these things to evolve so that the people can feel like they're growing new ideas, helping consumers, growing new spaces for new legal professionals to work. This is a real opportunity for lawyers and paralegals, and just generally looking at issues of change, opportunity, and risks, and making sure as a regulator, and now I'm coming back to our role in this, with your help and looking at what it is we may be able to provide, we do need to make sure that there is no harm to the public, and we are going to be seeking your input and your advice on how to develop very early approaches to managing technology applications and how that's going to evolve. So that's the message from last night. Keep in touch with us. We'll let you know when things are happening. This is a slow progression. We're going to cook this or bake this loaf a little bit more slowly. It is very complicated, but it is going to have an indelible impact on all of our practices in the future, something everyone should be keeping on top of. So let's just move to some housekeeping, just as some reminders. Bencher election 2019, the call for nominations is already open. Full instructions on how to file your candidate nomination, looking at all of you. Your candidate nominations are available on the website, and this includes information on the expectations of the role of bencher, the extent of the commitment that is going to be required if you want to be a bencher, and the deadline for the nominations is February 8th at 5 p.m. It's also Law Society Awards season. I was asked to remind all of you about the call for nominations for the awards. The awards for lawyers include the Law Society Medal, which was established in 1985 and recognizes lawyers who have demonstrated outstanding service. The Lincoln Alexander Award, which honors an Ontario lawyer who has shown an enduring commitment to community service. The Laura Legg Award, which is given each year to a female lawyer from Ontario who has exemplified leadership within the profession. Paralegals are also eligible for the William J. Simpson Distinguished Paralegal Award, which recognizes a paralegal who has demonstrated outstanding professional achievement. And both lawyers and paralegals are eligible for the J. Shirley Dennison Award, and this award recognizes significant contributions to access to justice and poverty issues. So I'd strongly encourage you to get out to all of your members and to make sure that everyone considers making a nomination for any of these awards. I think all of us can think of a person who always goes above and beyond the call of duty that deserves this recognition. And I do want to just note to you that last year, of the 40 nominations that we received for the Law Society Medal, only 3 of those were nominations from outside of Toronto and Ottawa. So I'm really relying on all of you to get the word out to make sure that this doesn't happen again. We really need more nominations. There are great and deserving members out there who should be recognized in their communities, but we need you to file an actual nomination to make this happen. So the deadline for the nomination is January 25th. So keep that in mind. Finally, because of the theme of the last couple of days of your conference, I wanted to just spend my last few minutes talking to you about the Member Assistance Program more specifically. I know you've had mentions of this in some of the sessions. I heard some interesting comments. It was a very interesting panel yesterday, and we also had some comments from Joe last night about stress and applying ourselves to our workspace when stresses are happening. I wanted to remind you all of the services provided through our Member Assistance Program. Several studies, of course, show that legal professionals are at higher risk of experiencing mental health illness and addictions. According to a study at the University of Ottawa recently, approximately 20% of the entire legal profession suffers from clinically significant levels of substance abuse, depression, anxiety, or some other form of psychopathology. I wanted to let you know, I think this will be very important and something you may want to let your members know. In May of this year, the Members Assistance Program actually received the ESNA Corporate Award for Excellence for our Member Assistance Program and our peer programs. ESNA is actually the Employee Assistance Programs Trade Association across North America. The Corporate Award of Excellence is given annually to an organization that showcases the excellence, innovation, and impact of employee or member assistance programs in the workplace. Nominations were received by a panel of judges from across North America, and they sought to identify organizations that have worked to design and integrate a program that enhances employee or member well-being and enables those members to work toward a healthy and productive work life. The selection committee for the award gave very serious consideration to the known stigma attached to professionals in the legal community who seek support for mental health and addictions issues. And the ESNA organization was extremely impressed by what MAP has accomplished in its 5 years. They were also very laudatory about the fact that the Law Society and Law Pro, through our MAP program, includes law students as an integral part of our strategy to ensure that we're driving utilization early in the career path and battling industry norms and stigma very early on. This early application in the professional continuum ensures that we're working with our young professionals excuse me, from the beginning of their careers. The MAP received very high praise from judges and all participants and was held up as a modern and inclusive example of systems for a profession. Just to put MAP's award and results into perspective for you, this program's 2018 year has a utilization rate of anywhere between 5 and 7%. Utilization is tracking very well, and it's on course to deliver much higher than expected results again this year, as it has for the past few years. We think of 5 to 7%, we think, well, all right, what's so great about that, Diana? But let me give you a comparison. Similar programs such as association or multi-member or multi-employer programs often run at utilization rates of between 2 and 3%. So we are double the utilization rate in MAP. And this is because it is very difficult and a significant challenge to be able to serve a dispersed population like we have in our memberships. It's difficult to connect and communicate, but it does appear that MAP is doing a superb job at making sure we are connecting. Our utilization rates continue to improve, and we are very pleased about this particular result. I wanted to remind you all that the Members Assistance Program provides law students, licensing candidates, licensees, judges, and their families with a full range of professional confidential services, including counseling, peer-to-peer support, crisis management services, substance abuse counseling, lifestyle and specialty counseling, as well as online resources. The MAP program is provided by Homewood Human Solutions, which is an external body, and they are experts in this provision, and it is fully confidential, funded by the Law Society of Ontario and Law Pro. It's just our money. We don't touch the service. MAP is an independent service. Through its mental health strategy, the Law Society is continuing to build our existing mental health initiatives, and we are laying the groundwork to provide additional supports or programs that will fall within our mandate and will help all of you and your members if you need that assistance. Addressing mental health and addiction issues is a priority for the Law Society, and we're continuing to examine the ways that we can address mental health and addiction issues through both preventive as well as through modified regulatory strategies. So if you know of any professionals who are experiencing stress or who are in need of support to improve their situations or to avoid harm to themselves or to their clients, please make sure you mention this confidential Members Assistance Program service to them. It is a very robust service. So that is it for me today. I'm going to stop there, and I would be happy to address any questions that anyone may have.
This is probably more of a comment than a question, but I was very pleased to see that the Law Society is going to be engaging in a public awareness campaign encouraging the use of lawyers. It has been so long that I think many lawyers have felt that the Law Society was not encouraging or supporting use of their services by the profession. And everyone loves to hate lawyers, unfortunately. And it's a huge hill to climb to be able to have the profession recognized and appreciated, I think, by the public in general. I worry sometimes that the pressure for complaints around legal services revolves more around the fact that lawyers don't deserve to get paid for what they do, rather than that there's not enough money in someone's pocketbook to pay them. So I just wanted to say for myself, and I think others in this room, thank you. If you can provide any more details about that advertising or marketing awareness campaign, I'd appreciate hearing about it.
Just for 2 seconds, keep watching the campaign. It's fledgling, of course. We're just starting. There'll be a couple of tranches, and then Convocation will evaluate it. But the core of the campaign, as you can imagine, is about supporting the public. So the message is very consumer-oriented. It's very much make sure you know that lawyers and paralegals are here to help you, and you need that help because that makes it easier for you to get that legal service you provide. We are hoping that we're going to drive interest in the profession and increased awareness amongst the public that there is a way to find lawyers and paralegals, because what we heard from the public when we did our research was that it's difficult for them to understand where to look. Where do they find someone to help them? And it may be an issue of cost and price, but really what we heard from the public is, you know what, if I could find a good legal services provider, I need the help, I know what I need. Our Law Society referral service is also a very significant part of this campaign. As I mentioned to you earlier, we made 45,000 connections in the past year on the lawyer referral service. Those of you who may be on the referral service, we thank you. Those of you who are not on the referral service, you may want to consider it. It's a great conduit. And members of the public, consumers who are looking for legal services, spend a lot of time talking to us about where they can find those people. So get engaged with the services, and if you see the public awareness campaign, let us know where you see it. We're always interested in knowing where you may have heard it or where you've seen it. We're seeing some already positive number increases just in traffic to the website and various other things, and this is always good news for us. So we'll keep you up to date on the outcomes of the campaign and let you know how things are going. Thanks very much for your comment. Oh, it's a quiet group today. This never happens to me.
Enjoy it while it lasts.
All right, I take that back. Yeah.
Hi, Valerie Brown, Family
Hi,
Law
Valerie.
Chair. Just, I guess, a few points of clarification. You indicated in the development of the new family license that the second phase would include an investigation into whether advocacy was something that they'd be licensed to do. Is that a second phase of the consultation process, or is that a part of the 5-year review?
That's the second phase of development of the license.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you also indicated that there was an increase in the budget, and part of that was going towards the development of the license. You referred to the fact that MAG is giving funding for that. Is the increase in the budget related to this initiative covered by that contribution by MAG, or is any part of that related to the fee increase that we're paying this year?
No part of the fee increase actually for 2019 is actually related to the family license, but there is a contingency fund where those monies may come out if the MAG funding doesn't cover the entire tranche. MAG has provided us with some initial funding, but we're waiting to hear, and as you know, the government will probably be pronouncing with regard to support systems in the next 4 to 6 weeks or so.
Thank you.
Good morning, David Camilletti, Wellington. For the Law Society Medal, we put in a candidate from last year who was not successful. Does that carry over for another year?
No, you should actually do that again. So if you can just resend the information. We don't assume that the nominators will want to put the nomination in again. So if you could submit, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Hi, Mark Ducharme, Timiskaming.
Hi, Mark.
Given the number of complaints involving sole practitioners and small practices and the upcoming work that's going to be done on the practice management, is there any sense or likelihood that that practice management will include business management, like more specifically like how to run a small business as opposed to just how to run a law firm, which resources in that I think would be very much appreciated. And I know up to now the Law Society's emphasis on saying, here's what you need to do your due diligence and make sure you're doing it right. It's really unwieldy and requires a small lawyer to be an expert on basically everything, including bookkeeping, including technology and those kind of things, and more practical resources. Is that part of the program?
It is. So the practice management helpline now, and we do have practice resources at the Law Society. There are some resources with regard to establishing your business, opening your practice, closing your practice, and the various activities of the bookkeeping and other things. But yes, this is meant to enhance all of those resources. We do not go out, as you know, when we do quality assurance, we do it through audit and practice reviews. So when we go out and we actually do remediate and help practitioners to correct all of their business practices, it's because we're doing a quality assurance review. We don't do consultation practice reviews, so to speak. It would be a little bit of a conflict, I think, for the Law Society. But the tools and resources will be enhanced. That is a focus. It's absolutely a focus for us. Notably, as we said to you, the complaints in the first 5 years of practice tend to be a little lower. It's actually in the next tranche, the 5 to 15 years of practice, where we're starting to see issues and trending. And you can imagine at that time, it's when you're no longer fresh and new, you're getting a little overwhelmed, family and activities are taking over, time is short, and people start to cut corners. And establishing a practice, and we're seeing as well a shift. We have a lot of licensees coming in now that are new, and we always in the first 5 years see a lot of them shift out from a firm environment to an individual environment, and there's a transition there that we need to support. So we do recognize that. The answer is yes, that will be included. If you have any feedback or specifics that you'd like to send us, please feel free to email me. Happy to have someone chat with you, but we do want to develop more supportive resources.
Hi, Diana.
Hi.
I won't spend a lot of time on this because I don't know if this issue is unique to my own practice area of criminal defense, but we ended up speaking about this after the breakout issues on lawyer unbundling of services last night. Right. This is about the lawyer referral service. It certainly doesn't work in certain practice areas, and I know that I speak not only for myself, but other people in the criminal defense bar. I finally managed to unbundle myself from the lawyer referral service. I hadn't renewed this year for the first time because it just wasn't worth it to pay money to give legal advice to people who weren't even being referred to my own specialty. For example, the triagers who were sending over referrals were sending over complainants, and if I got calls from complainants who were suffering and who had genuine issues, I would give them practical advice, general advice about trial process, et cetera, but I ended up giving huge swaths of my time, as do other members of my profession and my colleagues. We've talked about this, complained about it, and we give advice. We're stopped in the halls, we get phone calls, cold calls, we give this advice, but to pay for it finally became inane, and so this last year I didn't pay for it when I renewed, and then I was sent a referral. Somebody phoned, I didn't blow them off, I dealt with them, and then I was repeatedly bombarded with calls from the Law Society to pay the $250 plus HST, and it took a long time to explain to your counsel that I hadn't renewed for a reason. Anyway, I don't know if anybody else has experienced this situation, but I could see, for example, like lawyers signing up to do free advice, but to pay to give large amounts of your man/woman hours for advice that takes way longer than half an hour if you're being humane and diligent and helping people. This is not only not worth it, but I think unfair to the profession.
Okay, so thanks for that input. I'll take that back. As certainly the fee is related to administration, because as is the case, and you saw the lists of the scans of the activity of the Law Society, all of these activities need to be supported, and they cost money, and the charge is for all of you, every member, not just the ones on the system. So the charge is actually directed at ensuring that the people who are getting the referrals, now yours may not have been terribly effective, but the people who are getting referrals are actually investing in the fact that they're getting clients. But I will take that back. I thank you for that. Yeah.
Sir, good morning. Sam Michelle, Halton Region. You invited us at the beginning of the speech to kind of go over the website and to test it out. I actually tested it out, and I can tell you it doesn't work for me.
Okay, I'm sorry. Maybe you could send me your thoughts.
Yeah.
Your name is not in the directory?
No, so I've searched by postal code, as
Really?
you suggested. My name is not in the directory. I tried my home and my office address.
We will double check that. It should definitely be, you should definitely be there. My apologies. It's funny because I did it to myself the other day and I was there, so, but I will double check.
Michelle Garrett's Lambton Law Association. Just looking at that directory, the 10-kilometer proximity
Yeah.
does not work for rural areas.
Okay.
You might be off the hook now, Diana. I don't see
Okay.
any other.
That's good.
Anybody else have any other questions or comments? Oh, yes?
Thank you, Diana, for that very informative update on what's been keeping the Law Society busy and you busy. It was so informative that we've got fewer questions than historically.
All right.